My name is Paul Spencer Cash. I was born in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, on November 8th, 1923. My service started with my enlistment in the Army Air Corps on December 2nd, 1942, and I was activated almost immediately and sent for training. I graduated from flight school at Stuttgart, Arkansas, and was commissioned a second lieutenant on March 12th, 1944. Sent to B-24 transition training in Montgomery, Alabama, where I spent a couple months. Then I picked up a crew of 9 other men, and we trained at the Savannah Army Air Base for 2 months before going overseas. We went overseas, it was the latter part of August of 1944, and we picked up a brand new B-24 at Mitchell Field, New York, and flew it around for about a week before we started on our journey, and then went up through the Northeast through Guernica Field, New Hampshire for staging, and then to Gander Lake, Newfoundland, where our jumping off point was to go across the Atlantic. We left Gander Lake and went to the Azores. Then we went through North Africa, and then arrived at our base in southern Italy. Well, the missions generally were you found out the morning when you went to roll call, and they had time for roll call and time for briefing and all from the orders. And that's when they had the situation board up in front of the room with the big map, and they had a cloth or a cover over it, and nobody could tell where you were going that day until you sat down for briefing, and then they'd pull that thing up and you'd look and see, I've gone to Munich or some of the hot targets. You knew where the hotter targets were, but you found out real quick. And if they came up and said Munich, everybody, you could hear all over the room because they knew it was the toughest deal. Well, every mission, there are no milk runs because anytime you take an aircraft with 3,000 gallons of high-octane fuel, 5,000 or 6,000 pounds of bombs, and a load of 50 caliber ammunition, anytime you take one of those off the ground, you have something that could go off almost any time or have a problem with. So you're flying a real I don't know what you'd call it, but it's risky every time you go. We went on a training mission. I went on one with another crew down South Italy, sort of to get our feelings about the area and fly around the area. It was relatively safe in the area where we were. And then I can't remember the date of my first mission exactly. I'd have to look back in my logs and whatnot. But ultimately, on October 14th of 1944, we went to Odertal Oil Refinery, and were shot up a little bit and lost one main fuel tank due to flak, and we had to make a forced landing in Yugoslavia. And found out after we landed, I had questions about trying to get back across the Adriatic to our base, and the Adriatic runs probably 100 miles across, or maybe more, depending on where you are. And I decided not to try it because of our fuel quantity. We just didn't have enough fuel, and I found out after we landed we had about 75 or 80 gallons of fuel left, and we could not have made it. We'd had to have ditched out from the coast of Yugoslavia, probably somewhere. So we were very fortunate. But we got back without incident and flew some more missions. And then on January 20th, 1945, we went to Linz, Austria to a marshalling yard and received damage there and had to fall out of formation on the way back. And I lost most of my power, engine power, due to the cold weather. It was extremely cold that day. At our altitude is 22 or 3,000 feet, whatever it was, when I could look and see. It was extremely cold, like could have been 50 below zero or something, and controls froze, toggle switches froze, and the aircraft literally fell apart. We lost our prop governor on number 3 engine, which controls our hydraulic system. We lost it, and so we could not feather that engine. We could not feather the prop, and we eventually lost the prop, and it came through the fuselage, damaging all of the things, the hydraulic system and all that we had. We ultimately decided to make a landing in adverse terrain and under adverse conditions. We again did a mountain valley in some deep snow, and I had 6 of my enlisted men bail out before that. We ultimately found out that we lost 2 of them, and they're listed as killed in action, due, we believe, to enemy action where they bailed out. The 4 officers who went down with the ship, I had a substitute navigator that day who had spilled his parachute. He had the wrong parachute with him, and he spilled his parachute into Bombay and could not bail out, so we had to land, and that was the only alternative. We could not let him bail out. He would have dead when he left the plane, so we had to land, and we did survive the landing. We were taken prisoner overnight by some group, which I still do not know to this day about, because I think it was several days, 2 or 3 days before I regained consciousness from the accident, from the landing, in which the aircraft, I understand, was demolished and whatnot, and rightfully so. So I'm still here, and came back after that. I spent about 6 weeks in the hospital after being recovered, and it took us a week to get medical treatment from one Saturday afternoon when we landed until the next Saturday evening, and we finally made our way to a British mission on the coast of Yugoslavia at Port of Zara, which I think is listed as Zadar. And there happened to be a British mission there, and there was a British cruiser in port, and I can't remember the name of it. British cruiser, of course, is a very large ship. And they put us in the sick bay there and did surgery on myself and my co-pilot. And then we came back after a few days to Italy, and we spent about 5 or 6 weeks, as I recall, in the 26th General Hospital in Bari, Italy, which is in southern Italy.
What were some of your major injuries?
Well, I was just injured all over, really. The only fracture I had, fortunately, was my left ankle. I don't know why I didn't have more fractures, but my co-pilot was very badly injured. He had facial injuries. Excuse me. He lost his teeth and fractured nose, fractured jaw, just general. And I had facial lacerations in my head, and just generally beat up from the impact, and rumbling around the cockpit. I guess our seats, I understand, came loose from their tracks due to the sudden deceleration. And so we were very fortunate to even survive, but we all did survive.